Friday afternoon, and well, we're all in different places. It's still the fall, and that means we're still talking Siouxland Prep football with Justin Rust and Zach James of the Journal Sports Department. Gentlemen, good afternoon from our separate respective locations. Looks a little different for us, but the games are just as big as they've been all season, and let's get right into it with two defending state champions trying to get back to the UNI Dome for semifinal games. OABCIG, one of those, and they've got a tough test tonight.
Yeah, I'll be at that game tonight with OABCIG versus West Sioux. That's a team that was in the semifinals last year with West Sioux and when they lost to Westline, as Westline went on to win the title. And OABCIG in 2A winning the state title, so that's a big game right there. West Sioux looks different than they did last year. OABCIG looks mostly the same, so it should be interesting. OABCIG led by Cooper DeJean, but his weapons around have been so good. Griffin Dearson, I believe, had like 3 touchdowns again last week. He's the running back. They can swing out there when everyone's so worried about covering the wide receivers. Dearson just gets out in the flat and he gets out in routes, and Cooper finds him. You also have Trust Wells and Easton Harms and company too. It'll be interesting to see how West Sioux can slow them down. They're going to have to get pressure out on Cooper. That's the key. But he can get out of pressure so easily too, as he showed. The only team that's really been able to do that is Spirit Lake, and OABCIG still picked up a very nice one over Spirit Lake. So it'll be interesting to see if West Sioux can get the pressure on them because they have athletes though too. Blake Van Ballyugen and company. We'll see how well they stick with Trust Wells, but defensively OABCIG has been pretty good. But Dylan Wiggins has really come along for West Sioux. He's the one that took over for Hunter Deckers, and he's only a sophomore. And Coach Sweesow said to Zach that he sees the same stuff in Wiggins that he's been seeing in Deckers, that it's starting to click for the young sophomore. So we'll see how that does against what's a very experienced secondary for OABCIG. West Sioux's going to have to run the ball better than they have. They did last week, actually. Last week they did get some good ground yardage out of Carter Boltman. We'll see if that continues this week because they need that to kind of shake things up, or else Trust Wells and Colton Kopp and Cooper DeJean in that backfield will really wreak havoc there too. Of course, the advantage was with OABCIG, but West Sioux had a huge victory over Emmitsburg last week, but Emmitsburg only runs the ball, so now they've got to cover both. Should be an interesting game. I do give the edge to OABCIG, of course.
So 2 Falcons going at it tonight. The other huge game that we're following tonight, a cross-county rivalry part 2 for this season. The Beef Bowl, of course, one of the biggest rivalries around. And this year we get it twice.
Yeah, Beef Bowl part 2. That's the thing with this game. I don't believe there's ever been a postseason game between Central Line, George Little Rock, and Westline. Now, I'd have to go back a little further because Central Line, George Little Rock combined about 1975. It's easy for me to remember that because my dad was on the George Little Rock team the year they combined after that. I think it was 1979 or 1978 around that, after Central Line won a couple titles with Tom Roach. So my dad was from that county that time. So, I believe this is the first time they have met in the playoffs. Central Line was down by 10 going into the fourth quarter, came back, won that game 20-16 the first time around. Westline's defense has been very, very good in this postseason. Holding Spirit Lake scoreless last week. Now they get a team where there's been some questions of Zach Lutmer's a little dinged up for Central Line, their quarterback. However, because he really didn't run the ball that much. Kalen Meyer had over 100 yards, though, too. And they also had Caden Van Beek back, and he seems fully healthy. So Lutmer didn't have to do all that, which adds another dynamic to the Central Line offense. If Lutmer is healthy, they're really going to run the ball well, and they've got the weapons with Cooper Spieth in the passing game, too. That we'll see if Westline, they slowed it down the first time, but they slow it down again. Even when they slowed it down, Central Line found a way late. Westline's going to have to generate some offense. In the first game, Jackson Myers made some big plays. He's going to have to do that again. Tanner Severson had a huge run last week to put Westline up. He's been big all season for them, but if the Central Line can key on Tanner Severson alone, that's a big problem for Westline because I believe Zach Van Beek is still out for this game. So it's 2 really good defenses who can make the plays. Central Line's been able to make plays down the stretch to pull these out. Westline needed a field goal in the first week to advance. Central Line had to come back in unity, so both have made plays. Both have been there before. Westline a little bit more in Central Line. So it should be a defensive knockout battle. But being the game is in Rock Rapids, I would have to give the edge to Central Line, Georgia.
Last week, we talked about how Sergeant Bluff Luton faced a tricky test against Webster City, a team that plays a very unique style. Well, Sergeant Bluff Luton did not pass the test. Another team from Northwest Iowa, we'll see if they can crack the code of Webster City this week.
Yeah, and that's going to be Boyd and Whole Rock Valley's assignment tonight as they're facing Webster City in Webster City tonight. And the Nighthawks have been playing better as of late, especially defensively. And I think that Sergeant Bluff game between the Nighthawks and the Warriors was a big turning point for the Nighthawks. Now, granted, the Nighthawks didn't win that game, but it taught them that they could contend with some of the big boys in 3A, and not like they haven't in past years. This is the fourth time in 5 years that they've reached the state quarterfinals, including tonight. But the Nighthawks are really feeling confident that they can kind of slow down Webster City. Webster City likes to run the ball. They don't pass a lot. They didn't last week against the Warriors. And so Boyd and Hull is going to kind of look to slow down that Lynx run. And it'll be tough. A single wing isn't easy to knock down, to kind of slow down. But that's going to be the big assignment tonight for the Nighthawks, especially on the road. How can they slow down the Lynx? And it's not easy slowing down a single wing offense like that.
So I will add in there that, it does help facing the triple option going to single wing. Still a very difficult task, but Boyd and Hull's really been good against the run here lately.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the biggest and best under the radar games maybe this season have been at the 8-man level, and got a battle of two undefeated teams tonight, and seems that's pretty rare for as early in the playoffs as the quarterfinal round, but that's what we've got on tap tonight.
Yeah, Remsen St. Mary's is facing Audubon tonight. Audubon comes up to Remsen to face the Hawks tonight, and that's going to be a big key for the Hawks because in last year's state quarterfinal game, they hosted Fremont Mills, and I thought that home field advantage played a big role in that game against Fremont Mills, and I think it will tonight too. Both teams like to run the ball. You won't see many passes being attempted tonight in Remsen, especially on a beautiful night like this. Even if it was a crappy night, you wouldn't see many passes. But both teams like to run the ball, and it's going to come down to which team can establish the run early, and whichever one can establish it a little bit more dominantly early. I think that's going to be the big key tonight.
I agree with most of that. I do think Remsen's going to switch a little bit up tonight and be a little tricky with their passing game. They attempted a little more passes than I thought last week, and I wonder if that was kind of to prep for this a little bit this week. I believe that they might be working on that a bit with Blaine. Jackson Bunkers didn't come until late, and he broke off a big run last week. So I'm wondering if Remsen's working on something to try and catch Audubon off guard, because this is a rematch of last year's semifinals in the 8-man, where Audubon ran all over it, and Audubon's quarterback, Mr. Smith, is back this year again. He's been awesome this year. So I wonder if it's one of those things kind of hit on some of the bigger pass plays, just in case Audubon gets out to an early lead, and such, maybe a 2-score lead, maybe try and quick strike with a deep pass or two. Because I thought Remsen ran it a little bit more than I thought, and Remsen's going to have to play a lot cleaner game than they did last week. They still haven't played exactly the complete game. They have to clean up a lot of penalties.
Talked about a lot of key Iowa games, but Justin, a big one on the Nebraska side of the border tonight as playoffs continue in that state.
Yeah, Hartington Cedar Catholic travels to OaklandCraig tonight. Really tough task for the Trojans. OaklandCraig only has one loss in the season. I believe it's Archbishop Bergen. If I'm thinking right, it's to one of the Catholic schools. I know that. So they've been on a roll since last year. They're the defending state champions. First time around, they really handled Hartington Cedar Catholic, and it's going to be a tough task. You really have to slow down that run game for OaklandCraig, and they're so strong with their front five, and their running backs are so tough that it's going to be a tough task for Hartington Cedar Catholic. If they can establish run and take some time off the clock, that's the biggest thing. But OaklandCraig's defense has been so strong this year too. They even came across the side and beat Logan Magnolia, so it's going to be interesting, but it's going to take a lot from Hartington Cedar Catholic to knock off the defending state champions.
We talked about a lot of the big games coming up in Siouxland tonight, but before we go, wanted to open up the floor to you guys. Any other big takeaways, under the radar things, other games you're keeping your eye on tonight?
Yeah, I'm kind of seeing how Janesville stays with Don Bosco and that other 8-man game. You know, Easton Valley was able to play Don Bosco well. Earlier this season, Don Bosco still got a 30-point victory. It'll be interesting to see how Montezuma does in that other 8-man game. See kind of how the 8-man games flow. How's Van Meter going to do in 1A and how that sets things up against OABCIG potentially, or Western if they win too. So in 2A, how does PCM do in their toughest task of the season right now? Because that'll also set up to see how the things turn out in the 2A. So kind of looking at that, and I will note that there is no West Des Moines Valley Dowling rematch this year. They were supposed to play tonight, and that game got canceled because of COVID. A couple of players on West Des Moines tested positive, and they had to call the game last night, giving West Dowling the automatic win.
Justin Rust and Zach James from the Journal Sports Department. Hope you've enjoyed it, and enjoy the Friday games.